I thought rescuing her would make me a hero, but instead, it branded me the villain. Everyone saw my actions through a twisted lens, not the way I meant them. I'm trapped in this betrayal of intentions, watching the world turn my own good deeds against me. I never anticipated that stepping between her and her nightmare would thrust me into one of my own making. That night, I pulled her away from the clutches of a man who had twisted her world into a living hell. It seemed so clear then, the line between right and wrong. But life has a way of shattering those notions. What I envisioned as freedom quickly twisted into a burden, threatening to swallow us both. She saw chains where I imagined sanctuary, and it blurs the line between protector and oppressor. Maybe that's why I'm telling you this. You think you know who you are until someone holds up a mirror, revealing the cruel angles of your perceived righteousness. I thought I was the hero. She saw the tyrant. The bass thudded through the floorboards of the dingy bar, pulsating its way into my chest like a second heartbeat. Across the room, neon lights painted streaks of red and blue across her face. She was arguing with him. Again, my hand tightened around the sweating glass of untouched whiskey in front of me as I watched her, lips moving rapidly, eyes blazing like a storm. His grip on her arm was like a vice, branded into my memory from countless similar nights. I was halfway across the room before I even realized I'd left my seat. Her voice, strained and sharp, cut through the murmur of the crowd, and I could see guests turning to stare at the unfolding drama, curiosity mingled with apprehension in their eyes. The air was electric, charged with all the things left unsaid between all of us. For a second, I was caught in the tangled web of my own hesitation. The sting of past grievances, the heat of protectiveness, and the chill of fearful uncertainty all fought for dominance within me. That single second stretched, my heart pounding against my ribs like a wild thing desperate to escape, the anticipatory hush of the crowd taut as a drawn bow. And then his hand jerked her closer, a violent punctuation to their argument. My vision tunneled. Each step I took felt like breaching the surface from underwater, every muscle taut with the promise of fight or flight. But there was no question of flight here. I was propelled by an instinct deeper than thought. I grabbed his arm, my voice finally catching up with my actions. "Let her go," I said, firm, but my voice carried an edge that was new to me. He turned on me, his face a mask of defiance and anger. Words exploded out of him, sharp like shrapnel. And then he laughed, dismissing, belittling. The disdain in his eyes was like a spark to dry kindling. Before I knew it, my fist had already made contact with his jaw. The impact traveled up my arm in a dull thud that resonated with primal satisfaction. For a split second, the world held its breath. It felt righteous, until it didn't. As the crowd gasped, her eyes locked onto mine, not grateful, not relieved, just wide with something like horror and a hint of betrayal. My triumph crumbled into ashes as the adrenaline began to ebb, leaving me hollow and shaky. He staggered, clutching his face, the look of shock turning quickly to rage. Everything slowed down, voices turning to murmurs around me, the room pulsing as if with its own adrenalized heart. I could feel eyes burning into me from every direction, the weight of my action pressing down. A victory had been snatched from my grasp, leaving a seed of doubt planted deep in the fertile ground of consequence. As bouncers moved in, muscles tense and wary, I realized I'd crossed an invisible line, stepping into a conflict that wasn't mine to resolve, yet long past turning back. The ride home was a suffocating silence, the kind that fills every corner and presses down on your chest. My hands clenched the steering wheel, knuckles pale and unyielding like they were fused to it. The streets outside blurred into a stream of dark asphalt and fading traffic lights. Each red light felt like an eternity, an awkward suspension that did nothing but amplify the noise in my head. In the passenger seat, she sat as if any movement might shatter her. Her hands trembled in her lap, a silent accusation. I stole a glance at her, expecting any second for her to turn, to say something. Anything. But her gaze was fixed out the window, lost somewhere in the passing void. Words were swirling in my mind, accusations against myself, defenses rising like walls. A storm of guilt mixed with a flicker of self-righteous anger. Had I really gone too far? Was I supposed to apologize? My mind was a mess of tangled threads, and I kept pulling at them, trying to figure out which led where. The guilt sat heavily in my gut, a churning mass that refused to settle. I could feel her quiet sadness sinking into the car's air like a dense fog. I wanted to break the silence, to say sorry, but the knot in my throat hardened each time I tried to speak. Was it even my place to apologize? As we coasted through the dusky streets, the world seemed removed, distant, as if we were driving through a painting behind glass. Her fingers traced imaginary patterns on the fogged-up window, a soft, absent motion. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, each little tremor in her hand resonating in my chest. I reminded myself of the reasons, the justifications I'd wielded so fiercely in the moment. But now, faced with the wounded quiet beside me, they seemed flimsy and hollow. I replayed our earlier confrontation over and over, trying to pinpoint the moment it had all spiraled out of control. The quiet was unbearable, yet I feared what breaking it might bring. The flickering glances she cast towards me seemed to question my intentions, my motives. I could sense the accusation in her silence, feel it echo in the soft hum of the engine. If I could just reach across this gap between us and pull her understanding into me, everything might settle. But even the thought felt too bold, too presumptuous. A sudden, startled stop at a yellow light brought us to a jarring halt. Our bodies swayed with the inertia, and it was then she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine, not with anger, but with a depth of pain that cut through all defenses. One word, and suddenly it was all laid bare between us, that thin line of tension fraying at the edges, daring to snap. "Thanks," she whispered, voice cracking. "But what if he comes back angrier?" Her words lingered in the air, thick with implications neither of us wanted to face. We sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, just inches away from where the warm circle of the living room lamp met the shadow. Her tears glistened like tiny broken stars, and the room felt choked with her breath hitched in trembling waves. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed to taunt the silence stretching between us. I reached out instinctively, touching her hand, hoping to ground her somewhere outside the storm brewing behind her eyes. Her fingers curled around mine, small and trembling, but there was strength in them too, a quiet, desperate strength. I couldn't just do nothing, I murmured, my voice failing to disguise the uncertainty beneath. She nodded, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond me, maybe beyond herself. "I know," she said, her voice a fragile thread. I don't know what to do now." There it was, that palpable, unyielding fear. It rose like a tide, pulling us both under. I could feel it settling around us, heavy and insistent, making the room feel smaller with every passing second. Her fear made my protective urges twist and knot within me, leaving a bitterness I couldn't swallow. What if leaving was the only thing holding him back?" she continued, the words dripping one by one, each a little darker, a little heavier. Her eyes met mine, pleading silently, screaming at me to promise her safety, which I wanted to, desperately, but couldn't. "I'll be here." I tried, my voice a mixture of earnestness and the irritating knowledge of my own limitations. "I'll stay until we figure out something." Her nod was barely perceptible, and the weight of her vulnerability pressed against my chest, every breath a reminder of what she could lose. Or what I could lose. The thought gripped me unexpectedly, its sharpness a reminder of how deep this went, how much I hadn't calculated. "I know you're trying," she whispered, "and I do appreciate it. I do." A small, wan smile flickered across her lips, a tiny lighthouse amidst the storm threatening to engulf us both. The old analog clock on the wall ticked on, mirroring the quickened beats of our hearts. In this tiny apartment, everything felt magnified. The fear, the unspoken questions, and the creeping dread of a future that seemed to loom dangerously close. Silence settled again, thick and tangible, as if the room itself was bracing for something inevitable. Together, we listened to it, unable to push it away. Her head came to rest on my shoulder, a surrender of sorts, and I matched her breath for breath, wishing my presence alone could put us beyond the reach of her fears. We stayed like that, locked in stillness and wondering if daylight would bring answers or more shadows. Every morning started the same way, the dull hum of my phone vibrating incessantly on the nightstand. Each notification felt like a bruise blossoming under my skin, the words controlling and psychopath weaving a web I never meant to spin. Her posts appeared out of nowhere, each one dissecting my intentions with scalpel precision. Another tagged post floated across my screen, my name highlighted in an angry red, alerting the world to my apparent manipulations. The online onslaught was relentless, a storm of accusations that rained down with icy precision. Screenshots of our private conversations, once shared in confidence under the presumption of love, now twisted into grenades hurled at my character. Her friends rallied around, their likes and comments adding weight to her claims. The world was suddenly filled with judges, thumbs poised to ascend or descend on digital scales. In the quiet of my apartment, the familiar comfort of the walls seemed to shrink, caging me in as the accusations multiplied. Terms like narcissist and gaslighter clung to me like shackles. Alone, with only the muted light of my laptop illuminating the room, I scrolled through the endless feed, my mind aware of disbelief and self-doubt. Had our laughter, our secrets, been nothing but pawns in a game I was inexplicably losing? Friends texted, some offering support, others questioning their own understanding of who I was. Each message came with its own invisible question mark. Was I really this monster she painted me to be? I felt my hero image, the one I quietly reveled in, crumbling into a mosaic I couldn't recognize. The gap between my self-perception and her portrayal widened with each pixel shared. Yet somewhere deep inside, a nagging voice whispered truth. Hadn't I wanted to guide her to her fullest potential? Wasn't I the one who encouraged her hand away from the flame when all it sought was warmth? But the benevolence I believed in was tainted now. The altruism I prided myself on twisted into the guise of control. The joy of helping her succeed now felt stained by accusations of ulterior motives. Was my influence nurturing or insidious? Each question looped endlessly, like a snake eating its own tail. Every keystroke echoed in my skull as I tried to reason through the static. Perhaps I could fight back, launch my own counterattack. But the thought of retaliating with public words turned sour in my mouth. Confronting her in the realm she'd claimed as her kingdom felt like wading into quicksand. I closed my eyes, a futile attempt to block out the roar of the digital world outside my window. I wanted silence, yet the need to check, to see if there was anything new, overwhelmed me. The notifications beckoned, each one a vindictive lure sinking my mind deeper into confusion. What had I become, and more chillingly, what was she making of me? The room felt smaller, closing in on us with every breath. She stood by the window, arms folded tightly across her chest, looking out like there was something out there that could shield her from the heaviness inside. I could see her reflection in the glass, clearer than if she'd been standing right in front of me. I'm not him, I insisted, my voice low and desperate, fighting the tightening knot in my chest. I'm trying to keep you safe. Don't you see that? The words felt hollow, my convictions slipping through the cracks of my resolve as quickly as I tried to sew them shut. Her head bowed slightly, and for a moment, a flicker of pain crossed her face, then vanished like a shadow under the sun. You're nothing like him, she replied, barely audible. Her voice was a fragile, delicate thread. But every time you act like this, it feels the same, like I'm fenced in. The tension rode high between us, like a chasm that couldn't decide whether it wanted to widen or close. The very air seemed to hum with unspoken words, painful truths we were too afraid to voice. Her fingers tightened around her arms, her knuckles pale and tense. What do you want me to do? Step back and let you walk into the same traps over and over? I can't. I won't. My voice broke, the plea in it raw and bare. Vulnerability wrapped itself around me, tighter than any embrace I'd ever known, begging her to understand. She turned to face me, eyes amber and stormy. I want you to trust me, she said, her gaze unwavering, slicing through the space separating us. And I need to know that I can trust you, too. That you won't try to control my life just because you're scared. Her words landed like stones at my feet, each one heavier than the last. I felt the weight of them deep in my bones, and something inside me quivered, caught between the urge to reach out and pull her back or let her stand on her own. Neither one of us moved. A silence settled, thick and suffocating, as if it might consume us whole. Then she glanced at me, and I saw a spark there, a glimmer of the woman I'd first fallen for. I'm not leaving, she whispered, the firmness in her voice offset by the tremble of her lower lip. But I need to stand on my own, without you shadowing every step. I nodded, the motion small and uncertain but genuine. "I'm just scared," I confessed, finally letting the truth slip through. "Scared that you'll get hurt, or worse, that you'll realize you're better off without me." Her features softened, and she took a step closer, the distance between us shrinking but not yet gone. The air shifted, lighter now, though much remained unsaid, waiting for another moment, another time. For now, we would hold this place, a fragile, tentative promise hanging between us like a stalemate in a storm. I watched her leave, each step a loud echo of all the things I wished to say but never could. The air felt thick, almost syrupy, as her footsteps faded, swallowed by the distance and shadows that seemed to grow with every stride she took away from me. There was something final in the deliberate pace she set, a quiet ferocity that told me she'd decided on a path that, for the first time, didn't automatically include me. It started slowly at first. Little things. Her phone screen blank whenever I glanced over, the conversations trailing off into unexplained pauses. I remember her sitting in our usual coffee shop, opposite me, her eyes more on the window than on me. Her fingers danced lightly on the table, restless, like she was composing her words in the air rather than sharing them with her voice. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to bridge the silence that had started to gnaw at our moments together, threading insecurity through what I hoped was still love. "Yeah, I've been thinking." Her words hanging, incomplete, left the sting of anticipation burning in the back of my throat. When words finally came, they were a trickle, not the torrent I craved for reassurance. She spoke about needing space, about finding herself again. All I heard, though, were the unspoken truths, the painful consonants and vowels of "without you," echoed in her request. Each time she pulled away, a piece of me got stuck in the choking silence she left behind. I'd wait for her to come back, every parting filling the room with a louder absence than the last. My mind raced each night, retracing our steps, my heart drumming anxiously in my chest, seeking clarity in the cacophony of mixed emotions. Maybe it's nothing, I would tell myself, but the ache that formed in the pit of my stomach argued otherwise. Was it me? Something I'd done? Or worse, something I hadn't done? The uncertainty gnawed relentlessly, feeding a simmering frustration that could find no outlet. When she moved around the apartment, her movements deliberate and focused, all I could do was watch, a helpless spectator to her self-imposed detachment. I wanted to reach out, say something, anything that might reel her back in, but fear glued my tongue to the roof of my mouth, freezing the words before they had a chance to thaw. Fury flared unexpectedly, ignited by desperation, but the flame flickered weakly, dampened by the realization that loving someone means releasing your grip when they need to breathe. Yet, as she stepped out the door, leaving me behind in the chaos of my unresolved emotions, I couldn't help but feel my heart twisting in a labyrinth of heartache and hope. Her silhouette vanished, swallowed by the dim hallway light, and I stood there, enveloped in the silence she left behind, each breath heavier with the weight of uncertainty. The room is quiet, too quiet, as if orchestrated by an unseen hand conspiring against me. Shadows dance on the walls, their teasing shapes reminding me of figures from a half-forgotten dream. It's just me and my thoughts, and they're not playing nice. The familiar silence is loaded, like an old revolver, every unresolved question a bullet aimed directly at my sense of self. I sink deeper into the aged couch, its fabric rough against my skin, attempting a comfort it no longer possesses. My eyes fall on a spot on the ceiling, a stubborn water stain I never fixed. It's like a Rorschach blot, reflecting back at me the chaos I can't contain. Was any of it truly necessary? This haunting refrain. Was I just playing hero to quiet my own demons? Loops mercilessly, its echo a maddening companion. My mind drifts back to earlier days, those initial moments where intervention felt as intuitive as breathing. All I wanted was to help, to step in where others hesitated. But now, as I stare into the murky depths of my intentions, each act feels like a weighted question mark hanging heavy in the air. Did they need saving, or was I the one desperate for redemption? The air is thick, oppressive, holding echoes of conversations long past. Brief words exchanged through clenched teeth or smiles that never reached the eyes. I remember the fleeting looks, the subtle resistance in their stances, body language screaming truths I ignored. Was the heroics more about them, Or was the stage set for my ego, my need to matter? I pressed my eyelids shut, willing the darkness to block out everything else. But memories crash in like relentless waves. Her face, the one that began it all. Frantic eyes pleading silently. Yet when I intervened, there was that unspoken but. A door cracked open, never inviting me in, but oh, how I barged in, self-appointed savior of their story. I shake as the sensation crawls over my skin, an unsettling residue of choices that cannot be undone. A warped mirror reflects back a visage I barely recognize at times. The person who justified actions by noble ideals yet remained deaf to the underlying resentment. Was my empathy real, or was it vanity cloaked in heroism? Questions pool in my mind, reluctant shadows crowding the corners of my consciousness, providing neither solace nor escape. I feel cracks forming beneath the solid facade I've built, the edifice of understanding threatening to collapse under the weight of my solitude. A sigh escapes, involuntary and loaded, pulling me deeper into this abyss. The need to find an answer becomes urgent, a keening desire to plumb these depths and emerge with some fragment of self-worth intact. But in this silence, the only answer is more silence, resonating with the unsettling truth. The hero's script might have always been written for an audience of one. The air felt thick around us, heavy with words yet unsaid, and I didn't know if I was more afraid of speaking or leaving this last chance to silence. We stood facing each other, the soft glow of the street lamp bathing us in a surreal light. His eyes searched mine, a silent plea, or maybe just a mirror reflecting the storm within me. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. I took a breath, the kind that needed gathering all the fractured pieces of resolve. "I need to talk to you," I murmured, trying to steel my voice, turning my certainty into armor. He nodded, shoulders a little tighter, waiting. The street was empty, just his attention pinning me to the naked truth I'd rehearsed 100 times in my head. "I've been thinking." Another pause. My words tasted like hesitation before they found their ground. "You saved me," I admitted gently, letting the weight of that truth sit between us, unadorned. Relief flooded his eyes, a fleeting respite before I continued. "But I need to learn to save myself too. Can you respect that?" A frown creased his forehead, though it felt less like misunderstanding and more a wrestling match of emotions. I watched him trying to grasp the line I was drawing, my plea not just for understanding, but an acknowledgement of something deeper. "I get it," he started, voice rough around the edges but warm, a crackle of electricity in the air. I didn't realize how much I was holding on, what it did to you." My chest tightened at his admission, raw and vulnerable. A part of me wanted to inch closer, to erase the tension with a touch, but I knew this distance mattered. This was where the real work began, where the absence could instruct more powerfully than comfort ever had. The wind rustled leaves above us, a quiet rush like applause for the silence that stretched, allowing us to breathe. I could tell he was holding back tears, his fingers clenching subtly at his side. The enormity of these words, this moment, compressed into the space between our breaths. "Thank you," I whispered, realizing this wasn't just about setting boundaries, but about gratitude for moments shared, the good and the difficult. "Thank you for everything." He gave a small nod, half-formed words lingering in his gaze, but neither of us needed a perfect goodbye. Understanding shimmered there, like looking across a calm sea, seeing some distant shore, a place of new beginnings waiting for me. "Be well, find that peace." His voice a whisper made for two, a farewell wrapped in a gentle command. I turned to leave, feeling lighter despite the ache. Step by step, with each footfall echoing the claim to my own life, my own healing. The night folded around me, holding the remnants of a shared history, pushing gently towards whatever would follow next. I watched her silhouette merge with the crowd, a dwindling outline against the city's indifferent skin. Each step she took away from me pulled a taut thread through my chest, unspooling something I'd held on to so tightly. And yet, beneath the raw scrape of loss lay a curious lightness, as if some long-imprisoned bird had finally braved open skies. The chatter of early evening commuters formed a background hum, the rhythm of their lives unabated by my private upheaval. I stood rooted, my breath catching on the razor edge of this moment. Her figure grew smaller, moments stretching into what felt like hours, until the last glimmer of her presence dissolved amid faces I could not bring myself to see. A wisp of her perfume lingered in the air, teasing something deep in my memory and at the same moment liberating. Old patterns, stale arguments, and worn-out apologies flitted before my mind's eye, already fading like distant echoes. We'd built and broken so many things together, lives intertwined, then frayed, and in this moment, something new was weaving itself into being. My heart thudded the sudden truth. Letting her go was the hardest, most honest thing I'd ever allowed myself to do. Love didn't always mean holding on, restraining, or claiming. Sometimes, its purest form was found in the separation, the parting. I felt it, sharp and real, the realization like a pointed stone turned over in the palm. It seemed all at once, precious yet brutal. As she turned a corner and vanished fully from view, a profound weight lifted. It was an unexpected relief, a foreign clarity that brought with it an understanding I hadn't been capable of before. Instead of the chaos and confusion that always followed our departures, there was an unblemished acceptance. Her freedom became my revelation. I lowered my gaze to the pavement, worn but resilient under my feet. A gentle breeze whispered through the buildings, nudging strands of hair across my brow, cooling my flushed cheeks. Everything was still violently alive with the immediacy of change, yet there was a burgeoning peace in my bones, one I didn't dare disturb with empty analysis or hollow words. In this silence, a growing space for reflection emerged. She was out there, recasting her own life, and I was here, learning to be whole in solitude. The complexity of us remained, perhaps would always remain, a tight knot of unparalleled beauty and unbearable hurt. But in that complexity there lay a quiet hope, the kind that grows only from roots softened by humility and rain. For now, I let the crowd wash around me, standing on a precipice of what once was and what could be. The future unfolded uncertainly, a vast canvas yet to be marked, and one piece of quite nearly perfect truth hung in the air. The only way forward was to embrace the release.